Game Junction Podcast. The Game Junction Podcast.
Welcome to the Game Junction Podcast.
We'll be discussing all the hottest gaming news and pop culture news this week, as long as all the hot topics being discussed right now. So stay tuned. Here's what we got to say, and let's go into it.
Good.
Going great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, good times. So we've got a ton of news this week. Absolutely crazy. It was pretty hard to try to keep up and figure out what to put in there. So I guess we'll just go ahead and get started with sort of an overview, I guess, of what we're doing this episode. So we are going to try to talk about the top news, essentially. There was a lot of, I guess, B-level sort of news that happened, and I want to hit some of that too, but I want to make sure we're kind of hitting all the top stuff. And there's just so much to talk about. It's absolutely unreal. I can't believe that we are at a point in time where we're getting, 10 news stories a day on video games. Could you guys have imagined that, 15, 20 years ago?
It's pretty remarkable. It's exciting to see everything that's been going on in the industry. A lot of the things are bad, though. I gotta say that. A lot of the things we're seeing are bad, but they're news nonetheless. So it's always fun to talk about.
Yeah, a lot of bummer stuff this week. I mean, kind of sucks. There's been a lot of bad news here recently, unfortunately. But yeah, we've got also a few new segments that we're going to have this week, and Kurgirl suggested one, so I'm excited to check that out. So outside of news, we've got sort of our headline news and some bigger news, like our main stories that we can dive a little bit more into. So we set a little new kind of format to check out and see if you guys like for this episode. I think it'll be cool, but I think it'll be great to have some different segments too to touch on different things in the gaming world and pop culture space. And we've even with Lay, especially in his show, very heavy. He does everything, but very heavy on the movie stuff, and it's been cool to talk about a couple of those major things. So we definitely got this sort of set out to work a little bit different, and I think it'll be fun this week. So we'll go ahead and dive up into this, and we've got first the Persona 3 Reload gets some major backlash on the trailer because it was a live action trailer that fans dubbed to be absolutely terrible. I assumed you guys watched that trailer.
Yep.
Thoughts?
There's a reason why there's so many bad things about it. I mean, where do you start? It's one of those things, like if you don't nail it on the head, like let's say One Piece, it's really hard to crawl out of that. And I don't know, it's gonna be rough for them when they finally go out with it.
I mean, the thing is, like, that trailer didn't represent the series or game at all, I don't think. And like, I played the original Persona 3. I'm a fan of the series. It's not one of my favorite in the world, but I don't even, like, what were they thinking? And it had a little bit of production value to it too. So like, it went through a few people to like approve this trailer. Like, people thought it was good, and I'm thinking, what the heck is going on here?
This is an absolute winner. Yep. Everybody's going to love this. Post it. It'll be fine. What's the worst could happen? You
think it's going to win an Oscar?
Oh, 100%. That's
Absolutely.
going to be Oppenheimer.
Yeah, in the opposite universe for sure.
A Razzie.
Yeah.
So why go with the live action instead of the traditional type of trailer? That'd be the big question I would be asking on it.
I think it's one of the things that Netflix started with One Piece, which was received really well. I honestly was 50-50 on it. I actually decided not to watch it. But to a lot of fans, the One Piece live action actually hit the nail on the head. Right? A lot of people liked it, So I think it's just one of those trends that big companies try to go for, and they're like, okay, people are into live action. Let's try to adapt anything and everything into live action, and then it backfires on a lot of projects because there's not enough passion. There's, to them, it's a number on the paper, so they will just make it, assuming that it's going to make a lot of money. That would be my take.
Yeah, I'd say it fails more than it succeeds. I mean, I guess the One Piece works. I think I watched about the first 4 or 5 episodes before I didn't hate it. It just other stuff I was watching at the time, and it did good. But it's also, being a fan of One Piece, and I'm still in the process of catching up. It's taking forever. I see it and I like it. I'm like, they're shorting some things here, cutting some stuff. It makes sense for the live action, but as a fan of the series, I'd rather just watch the original series. But I get, if it's done well, it could hopefully pull in non-fans. But I mean, if they're not going to get fully invested in the series and they're just going to watch the live action, I don't know if it's fully accomplishing what it sets out to do, which is essentially bring more overall fans into the fold.
Here's a problem though with that, Mark. I'm a fan of One Piece as well. That is not an easy series to recommend. I read 129 chapters of the manga, somewhere around there, and I've watched about 400 episodes, and I'm still missing like 800 episodes or something crazy. It's over 1,000 at this point, right?
Yeah, well over.
Okay, so who in their right mind has the time to get through that entire story with 15 different story arcs? So I get it. It makes sense to me. However, we've seen anime movie adaptations be just as bad as video game adaptations over history. I mean, look at Dragon Ball Evolution.
Don't mention
Death Note.
No, that's the greatest movie ever. I don't know what you guys are huffing something.
You're wilding on that one.
I'm obviously joking. just for the record.
Fun fact, though, I will tell you what good came out of that. There's a PSP game that is a top tier fighter. It is a really good fighting game. Like it's competitively played because you can use the ad hoc mode, and people are still playing it now. Like I still see there's like competitions out there. Obviously, it's a niche thing, but it's a really, really good fighter, and it's reminiscent of the Street Fighter, the movie, the game for Sega CD. I don't know if you guys know about that one. But yeah, there was a Street Fighter movie game, and it's also really good. So, yeah.
I guess there's always something good out of bad things.
Yeah. I guess I'll have one last thing to say on it is, as far as, because I don't know what the Persona 3, how it's actually going to look. The trailer was sketchy at best. But as far as the One Pieces, I'll say this. It did, like my dad, because I ended up watching with him, because he's like, oh, this looks interesting, let's watch it. He saw like the trailer for it. Somebody who had never really watched anime watched that and found some level of enjoyment. I mean, he enjoyed watching it. So, but I watched it one time. I don't know if he's probably never going to dig into it.
That's
not knowing the daunting task of the 1,000 series and how many chapters with the manga there are.
That's interesting, knowing your dad growing up, that he would watch One Piece. But go ahead, Kurgle.
I was gonna say, like, the ultimate goal, like, if it is to bring new fans in, realistically, do they like want to sell more merch? Like, what is the end goal for somebody who can't? I mean, I don't know. Like, is there that much value to bring somebody into the actual like episodes? I'm trying to see it from a business perspective, and I don't get it.
Well, yes, because the One Piece. So with Crunchyroll, I mean, I don't have a subscription to it anymore, but I know I remember reading the news stories that One Piece jumped up to the top 3 of their charts. It was hitting like 2 and 1 and 3 over time when that series launched. So yeah, it did bring people in, and I assume the same with the manga because that's far ahead of the anime even. I can't even tell you how many chapters of the manga there are. Like,
I guess because I don't know how Crunchyroll does their stuff, but was that jump new fans watching it or old fans deciding, hey, I want to rewatch it and compare the series? Was it actual jump? I mean, I guess if the live action continues to makes money and they make more, that'd be the only really way for them to retain an audience that really doesn't have an interest in the animated aspect of the series.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, to get back to the Persona 3 Reload, though, the game does look genuinely really good. I can recommend the original Persona 3. It's a little harder to go back to. When the Shin Megami Tensei remaster for Switch came out, I went back and checked out just a little bit of some of the older Personas. I played Persona 1, 2, and 3. I spent maybe like 5 hours each. Of course, they're long games where you can invest hundreds and hundreds of hours into those games. But I was curious to go back and see how they held up. And it holds up okay. So I think this is needed. I think it's cool. And I mean, the collector's edition sold out, so there's definitely market interest for it. So I don't know what that live action trailer did, if anything, but yeah, it's interesting stuff. So I guess to get into the first thing, because well, I will be straight up. There's a lot of Palworld discussion this week. There's a few really big topics, and I guess this is sort of like headlining news. Plus, there's still sort of main stories with it because there's a lot of avenues going on with this game. But I guess the first thing would be that over 5 million copies in 3 days sold, and that is Steam sales. This does not include Game Pass, which was free if you have a subscription, and I imagine that the Game Pass subscription players were far above that. We don't have a number, though.
It's hard to tell because I did read that apparently the Game Pass / Xbox version did not run as well as Steam version.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting to see because, if one side of the player base has a really good time, the other one is miserable because it's not optimized or whatever, that's gonna definitely bring their numbers down. But yeah, it's pretty crazy how well they're doing for sure.
Yeah.
I think every day I've opened Instagram, there's been a new post about Palworld, either about a mod, how much money it's made, players, this entire week.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, we haven't had a game hit mainstream in this sort of level, I feel like, as with sales wise, plus you have Game Pass in a very long time. It's weird because this is the sort of thing that Pokemon usually does. Like, we usually see these type of numbers from Pokemon, which makes sense for Pokemon. But with Scarlet and Violet, it was a different story because people saw the reviews of, hey, this runs terrible. Fun game, but it runs really bad.
Still runs bad.
Yeah, still runs bad. Like, they were supposed to fix that. But these are like Pokemon numbers. So for, I guess it's technically like an indie game, right? This would technically be an indie game. Yeah. Okay, so this is insane and could potentially be the best-selling indie game of all time.
So I just say it shows that there's a market for these Pokemon games, that if Game Freak actually put love, care, and actual money into their games that should look like this, they would actually sell well. It just shows that they just continue to put out mediocre games that make money and they don't really care. The last like two series of 2 gens of games just kind of felt soulless after a while, where it's like, hey, it's an open world game, poorly optimized. It feels, at least for me, the Scarlet about at times felt really empty. And this just feels like a game that's like, well, why can't, I think the bigger question is, why can't Game Freak make a game like this with all the billions of dollars that they have?
And that's a good segue into the whole thing with AI and how, the company behind Palworlds got accused of copyright infringement. They're using AI, this and that. But at the same time, people are saying like they only worked on the game for 2 years. People don't understand that they had a lot of background with their title that first it didn't blow up. It did really well, which is Craftopia, and which is essentially a Breath of the Wild clone that was made into something like Ark, right? And they took that base and they built upon it, and they probably used AI. I mean, you can't blame them if they did, as long as they haven't been stealing art, which people say like, well, it looks exactly like Pokemon, and Brandon and I just talked about it. It's interesting to see because in a way, imitation is the highest regard in a sense, or flattery to the original creators, because you inspired somebody to do something different, right? And when they do it better than you, then you get all upset. So
Pissy.
it's funny to see. I don't know. What do you think, Brandon? Which Pokemon did it remind you of when you saw it?
You mean like the actual creatures or the game?
Yeah, no, the creature that you told me about.
So I saw one of the creatures, and it'll be in an upcoming video. I captured footage of it. I saw one of the pals. They're pals. Look exactly like Eevee. Exactly like Eevee. Like as if the assets were like completely taken from Pokemon. The only thing that were changed were like the collars, which, like, if you know anything about Pokemon, there's like shiny versions of them. So it was almost like they took like the shiny version, which I forget what the collars for the shiny of the Eevee is, but they took that, and basically the face structure was just mildly changed. And I was like in shock when I saw that playing the game. I was like, holy crap, like it legitimately looks like Eevee. And I get where people are coming from with the comparison to all the creatures. I think that here's the problem, right? So AI is a great tool. We talked about it last week. We even talked about it the week before. It's just it's hot in the gaming world and in all media. But the thing with AI is that they're only pulling from things that already exist. They're not creating technically anything new with the AI that we have access to and these companies have access to. They're pulling from things that have all, been made and are basing it around those ideas. So it's almost hard to not say that, like, yeah, it pulled assets from Pokemon. It had to have. There's some that look like Digimon. There's a few I saw one that looked like Agumon. There were some that looked like they were straight out of Monster Rancher. Which were all these type of games that are like Pokemon. I mean, you even had like Dragon Quest Monsters. Some of them look like that. Like if you look up comparisons and pull up the full list of pals and you look at the list of these other games, you'll be blown away at like how close that some of them are. And I imagine that if AI was used, which I don't know that they'll ever come out and say that for sure. But
God, no.
yeah, I mean, that would be devastating for them. But I would think.
But I mean, would it actually? Because I don't know. I work in software development, and basically the name of the game now for anybody, and I feel like for video games too, is like if you're not on board with AI and the efficiency it can bring with certain like tedious tasks, you're out. You're gonna be phased out. Somebody's going to push you out. And I feel like it's been a controversy last year, and just now people are understanding that it's just what you have to do in order to survive as a company. And I feel like it sucks for artists. It sucks big time for artists, graphics designers, any type of artist, right? Even music is getting ruined right now by AI in certain segments.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, smart artists and artists that want to be around are not going to hire a producer. They're not going to hire, I mean, obviously, then you're like eliminating other subjects from the story. But if you're smart and if you're a business driven person, you will say, okay, how can I utilize this to my advantage? And I feel like if news came out, like everybody knows they already used AI, right? It's pretty obvious, right? We can be all on board with that. If news came out like, oh, they used AI, they even made an AI game. I need to pull it up now. It's gonna bug me if I don't tell you guys.
The farming game you're talking about? Farmtopia?
No. That's Craftopia. It's AI Art Imposter. AI Art Imposter is an AI drawing party game for 3 to 8 players. You're a progressive artist who commands AI to generate images, and you don't need aesthetic talent to draw good artwork. It only takes 5 minutes to play, and multiplayer between Steam, Android, and iOS is supported. So they're obviously like cool with using AI as a base for their freaking game, right? Where does it pull from? It pulls from the internet. Where does the internet pull from?
How many companies already do that? If it's a fine, is it really illegal if I can just pay to make the problem go away?
Yeah, it's just there's a price check behind that. That's it.
I just think you have to accept, like, AI. Either you're gonna embrace it or you're gonna fall behind. Like, it's there, it exists. People are gonna use it. Are you able to adapt? Because that's gonna be the future.
Yep.
Agreed.
I agree with that. I mean, like, there's no way getting around it. It's same thing with like the physical media stuff. Like, unfortunately, no matter what we want to happen, like you just kind of got to go with the flow. Media in general has always, and tech has always been making massive improvements that's instantly generated into all forms of media, music, video games, TV. Like, you see these technical improvements and they're implemented right away, and AI is just another piece of tech that's been invented and is going to be implemented, and whether it's for better or for worse, coming up with a couple of the discussions we have, it could have potentially been a part of that as well. But we've also got this week. Now, this is a pretty interesting one because I've not heard anybody talk about it yet. But there were the 13th annual New York Game Awards took place, and I popped into part of the live stream, checked some of it out, and I mean, it's an established award show that unfortunately it seems like doesn't have the type of funding that the Game Awards has, and that's unfortunate because it's cool to see these other companies be able to give awards to these games as well, and have different opinions and people that aren't biased and based out of, mainstream sort of media. But what was interesting is that the way that they presented it and showed it on their live was kind of cool because they've got, of course, Baldur's Gate 3 winning one of the Game of the Year awards, but also a game called Honkai Star Rail, which was one of them that was... God. Yeah. And I don't know much about that. Okay, it's a mobile game.
It's like it's a waifu simulator. It's the best way to say it.
It's funny because my friend just tried to get me to play it, and he's like, "Yeah, it's a fun little game. It's like, in between, what's that other waifu game? Genshin Impact and I can't remember.
There's a lot of them,
but basically a couple of similar games, and it was funny because." He was just telling me about it, and I looked and I was like, I don't know, man. There's so many games by Tencent and other Chinese companies that are just being pumped out to take all of your money. And you see when Brandon was saying it's funny it's not funny, it's fun to see on different games awards show that's not just shoving ads down your throat because they became so big that it's more about sponsorships and stuff than it is about video games. So I'm gonna check that out for sure.
Yeah.
Reference to Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh yeah.
I see more ads than people actually playing it.
God.
Well, that's. I mean, it works for them. They got whales that support that. They wouldn't do it if it wasn't profitable. I can tell you that much. But
that's true.
I was referencing this year's Game Awards show. That was basically turned into a massive, ad.
Always.
And they were shoving. I don't feel. Did you guys feel like it was like that last year though?
Yes.
Last year I feel like they gave the developers more time than they did this year.
They did. Well, Me and Mark streamed it last year too, and you had the same opinion, right? Like you felt that way as well. They gave him a little more time to speak.
I think we all know who ruined that because he could not shut up.
Yeah, last year. Yeah, last year. What's his name? He came back again as a joke.
Judge? Yeah, it was way too long. He spoke for forever, and it was like, dude, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean,
Literally.
he burned Call of Duty, so he's in high regards for me.
Yeah.
He's a good actor. I like him. He just spoke way too long.
But they probably paid him to do that. I'm sure he didn't just fucking. They have programs. They rehearse for these things, right?
Oh yeah.
It's all planned out. Like there's.
The negative backlash was like everyone was like this speech was too long.
Yeah.
So they forced them to shift route.
Anyway, we're jumping out of track again.
Well,
Brandon, you were saying about the show?
Yeah, so the other one to win the big award, which I think I haven't got to play yet, but it seemed to have gotten high praises. Was Alan Wake 2. So I don't know if any of you guys have played, but it was up for a bunch of nominations at the Game Awards. But if I remember correctly, it didn't win anything. Did it?
It did. It won. Best. Oh shit! What was it?
Some weird
Not best
category,
directing,
right?
Best story or something like that, right?
I think it was
Okay.
story.
Okay.
Yeah, they won a
Sounds
pretty
about right.
major segment.
Okay.
And
So
the founder or whatever, the CEO, he was talking a bunch about it. Yeah, it
interesting.
was pretty good.
Yeah, so I mean, those were the three big ones from that, which is interesting. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom got nominated for 3 categories versus just 1 for the Game Awards. So that was, I mean, cool, but it didn't win anything, which I think it should have. But that's just my opinion. So
Alan Wake won Best Game Direction, Best Art Direction, and Best Narrative.
oh, geez, okay, it won 3.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. I knew it was something regarding the story. Yeah.
Oh,
It
best.
seemed like people really liked it.
Yeah, it really did seem like people loved it. I was on a stream, a New Year's Eve stream, and everybody on that show hated it. So I was like, I was like talking about it like it was, you know, probably like a good game. I was like, I heard great things. Like, it seems like it's really good. I want to grab it when it's discounted. And they're all like, nah, like it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. The first game's a masterpiece. This game is a walking simulator, is what they were saying, with a flashlight. So I don't know. But indie game that won was Asgard's Wrath 2. So that was the other thing. And Hi-Fi Rush took Best Music Direction. So more of the same award. I don't know. Did Asgard's Wrath 2 win anything at the Game Awards? I'll be honest. I don't even know anything about that game. If I played the first one, but I don't know anything about the sequel. So, Super Mario Brothers Wonder won Best Kids Game. Cool, I guess. Makes sense. Makes sense. So, interesting stuff. I've seen no coverage on this event, so.
Oh yeah, it didn't.
How many concurrent viewers did they have when you joined in?
Well, there was like 300 and some people, so nothing crazy. But it looked like they were multi-streaming too, so and potentially to more than one channel even. So I don't know. Just on YouTube when I popped in for 15 minutes, that's what I saw. So. Obviously not a massive show because it's not getting that sort of attention, but I figured I'd bring some light to it, considering it's not getting that attention, and maybe it should. So we've also got
13th as well.
What is it?
It was the 13th.
Yeah, 13th. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought was weird. That like this is 13 years deep. It's been around longer than the Game Awards. So
is it a part of like some kind of organization, maybe a university or something? Because it might be like one of those things where they started as a project and, you know, it kind of stays steady. People like it and they just keep doing it.
It had that vibe. It had that vibe.
Yeah, maybe it's not, you know, maybe its main goal is not to just be straight up big show. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, how many of these awards existed, but the VGA is the one that caught steam and everyone just accepts as like the main one.
Yeah.
Because it's got all the backing and it's mainstream media, you know, picking the games.
Yeah.
So
That's kind of what you need for it to be mainstream.
Yep, and the ads, the good old ads. But we've also got, which I am very excited for, super excited for, Tekken 8 releases this week, and I have seen nothing but raving reviews. I've seen that people are saying it's the best since 2, which has always been regarded as the best in the series. It got a lot of 10 out of 10s. I saw people saying it was a perfect fighter. So take it as you will. There were, you know, some like mainstream outlets, but also some like YouTuber, content creator, reviewers and people covering it. What are you laughing about?
I'll tell you in a moment.
Okay, yeah, let's tell me now. I want to hear now. I'll forget in a moment.
Let me check the Steam reviews. So it has very positive rating right now. It released yesterday, and it already has over 2,000 reviews. And
Jeez.
so I'm reading. I always like to read reviews on Steam because I feel like people are so honest and blunt in Steam reviews that
Yeah.
oftentimes it's a very good indicator. I love watching YouTubers talk about video games, but at the same time, sometimes I just want to read these comments because this shit is gold. First review says, start the game. Jin speaks Japanese. Leroy speaks English. They understand each other. Best game, 10 out of 10. And then
10 out of 10.
and three reviews under says, all caps, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm hard.
That's hilarious.
People, I mean, people just they seem to enjoy it. They seem to enjoy it a lot. It looks like it stays true to their format, and it's one of those things like with fighting games. I feel like is a very niche audience. It's a very established audience, right? And they don't necessarily want like crazy improvements, right? Obviously, you're gonna do what you're gonna do with graphics wise, but it doesn't seem like they ask for a lot when it comes to fighting game fans.
Yeah.
So people seem happy. It looks good.
And the thing that's different with Tekken is it's not like most fighters in the fact that it is a 3D fighting game. So it's not your standard 2D sort of style of game. It's like that. Well, it's the sort of fighting game where you can like switch your stances and switch almost like the sort of mode that you're fighting in, if that makes sense. But it's in a 3D space versus like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat that are 2D and have traditionally all
2D,
yeah. So it's interesting because generally 3D fighters do not get rated nearly as well as 2D fighters because they aren't as high in the competitive space for some reason. I mean, I guess I get it because as a fighting fan, I don't like 3D fighters as much as I do 2D fighters. I feel like it's much, you have a lot more control over 2D fighters, and I don't know what it is.
It just
but
adds
another element.
I feel like, yeah.
If you played like
is Killer Instinct another 3D one?
No, it's
Or
actually
it's
2D. Yeah, it's actually
it is,
2D.
okay.
Yeah.
I feel like they just use a lot of effects, and I never played it,
They,
so that's why
they
I was
do.
wondering.
Yeah, that remake's. Did you guys see that remake? They are putting up. It's like 15 years old at this point, 12 years, something like that. They are releasing like a new edition of it where if you already had the game, you get free upgrades. But they're like revamping it. They're adding in that. I forget what it is, but it's for like the delay for online fighting so that you don't have that sort of so you don't have a delay. I forget what the term is called. But they added in like new fighters. They unlocked all the fighters for people that didn't have all the DLC. They made like a massive improvements to it, and it's still played competitively. So now it's like bumped up, which is really interesting. But I was reading just like a quick thing here on PC World gave Tekken 8 Editor's Choice Award, and the pros are suitable for everything from beginners to professional gamers, top-notch controls, graphics, and sound, large and varied character gallery. Cons are several classic fighters are missing, the story is more crazy than understandable, and most things were here before. So, and their verdict was that it is a great game, an improvement on the predecessors, and it's not a revolutionary sequel, but all the improvements make Tekken 8 a must-have for fighting fans, whether you play it to be the best or just for fun. So, yeah, I think it looks cool. I mean, I definitely want to try it out. Did you guys play Pokken Tournament? Did any of you guys play that? The Pokemon Tekken game?
Not a fighting game guy.
Yeah, it's really interesting because that one takes the switching styles of playing, like they go full force with it, where you'll play as a 2D fighter and then somebody can like hit like reach a meter or something and then switch to the 3D fighting realm, like in battle, like real time. So it's really like complex in that way, and I'm surprised because that's a Pokemon Tekken game, but that's interesting stuff. So. That just released, right? Yesterday?
Yeah.
24th.
Okay. 24th. Okay.
No, never mind. I think it was yesterday. No, I was thinking different.
Tekken is on the 25th. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, you can grab that now, and looks to be pretty good.
Sick.
looks like we also got some Diablo 4 Season 3 feedback. Kurgle, you know a little more about this than me?
Yeah, I was excited. I was like, I started season 1 and I leveled 3 characters. And I was like, yay, Diablo looks amazing. It's made for 7-year-olds, but it's cool. So it ran smooth. It was great. It was not complex at all, which I like about ARPGs. And then, season 1 was and I was like, I'll wait. And then season 2 came out. And it was like a little better, but I didn't want to really commit my time. I said, I'm going to wait another season.
Yeah.
And then I saw the announcements for season 3, and I was like, hey, they're moving in the right direction. They're actually listening to the player base. And as always, I like to give it a few days because, nowadays companies just want to release day one patches and shit. So I was like, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to download it right away. And I watched one of my favorite streamers, and he's like, what is this dog shit? And it was just, it was literally basically what they did is they took in ARPGs, they make these things basically called leagues. And every time you're playing through the campaign again, and you're leveling character, they make some balance changes. They put a new mechanic or whatever. And what they did this season for some reason is they thought it was a good idea to put the league mechanic right from the level 1. So by the time you level up, you're like, okay, I played through the whole thing. I was like, okay, I'm done, And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to invest my time in Diablo this season. So yeah, played on launch, was really excited, played through 3 different characters, spent probably over 100 hours on the game. And then ever since, never turned it back on. So yeah, they got some harsh feedback, and I don't know, it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, Diablo 3
is... You play Diablo?
Yeah, I played it. It's gotten a lot of bad feedback. I mean, I think for good reason. I think it's gotten better. I don't know anything about Season 3. I don't know if I'll go back to it or not yet, but yeah, I don't know.
I played it when it came out, and I just didn't care for it, and I kind of dropped it like halfway through the story.
Are you on PC or on console?
I played it on console, but I played Diablo 3 on console. And I don't know. I enjoyed Diablo 3 far more than I did playing Diablo 4 personally.
Yeah, I'm a Diablo 2 fan.
Me too.
I always loved, and I have so many great memories of Diablo 2, and I'm still clinging on to that hopelessly. Because I saw Diablo 3 when it came out, and I had no desire to play it. And then Diablo 4 came out, and I was like, oh my god, like they're going back to like the dark theme and very creepy mood. And then I was like, great, this is gonna be amazing. And then Blizzard being Blizzard nowadays, a shell of their former selves, they ruined it.
Yep. Blizzard seems to mess up a lot of stuff these days. I too am a big Diablo 2 fan. I liked 3 as well. I liked it more with the expansions. I'm trying to think of the very last one that came out. I've got like the
Reaper of Souls.
Yes, yeah. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that. I felt like it gave a sort of return to form. But my excitement with Diablo 4 too was that it was going for a very dark theme. The whole hell and demon stuff and all that. I love that sort of theme. So I thought it was going to work great for it because it's called Diablo. So, I was pretty excited, but I didn't hate it like most people. I had fun with it. I might go back to it to try the Season 3. We'll see. But Baldur's Gate, man, it wipes over Diablo big time. It just does.
It should strive to be.
It just
I mean,
does,
they
man.
are very different. They're very different games, but you can still, people say like you shouldn't compare apples and oranges, but sometimes you should. And this is a perfect example because you see how much passion and effort went into Baldur's Gate 3. And I'm nearing the end of my journey in Baldur's Gate 3. And it's like ever since I was a kid, probably one of the best gaming experiences I've had in like probably a decade.
Yeah.
Easily.
You're streaming that now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thought so.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you can feel the love and energy that was put into it compared to
for sure.
Blizzard's like, we only care about the bottom line.
I mean, look at Diablo Immortal. Like that would fan outrage on that.
Did you guys Yeah, there was so the streamer that I watch, and he's a little bit of a degenerate, but he's really fun. His name is Quinn69, and basically, he spent $25,000
Oh my
in
god.
Diablo Immortal to get this like most upgraded gem or
That-
whatever. He
Some
wanted to see
Counter
how
Strike
much.
stuff right there. CS:GO.
Yeah, he was like, I'm gonna see how much money am I gonna need to spend so you guys don't have to spend it for me to get this like top of the line gem or whatever, right? And there's not that you can get this one gem. You can get 10 of those gems on one character. So it just blew my mind. What a shame. I mean, that whole announcement was a disaster, you know.
Oh god, the outrage
the lead
was
director, yeah, the lead director is like, oh, we have a new Diablo game, and then he goes like they boo them, and then he's like, oh, what, you guys don't have phones? I was like, shut up. Oh
It's
my
the
they're
worst
so
PR he could have
disconnected.
ever done.
Oh yes, that has to be the worst moment, you know.
so bad, so bad. Yeah, I mean, I tried it too. Did anybody actually play it? Like, give it a go at all?
I played it. I
No.
leveled 2 characters to
Ooh.
max level.
Ooh, yeah, I didn't play it that much.
But I'm like that. I will play something that I hate just so I can have a good grasp on it myself, so I can use my platform to tell people don't fucking spend time and or money on this bullshit. Like, it's terrible.
Starfield.
I thought.
I said the word. I said the word.
This my
The
my
F word.
blood pressure just started
I
going
know.
off.
I know. Every time I say it. I mean, yeah. Blizzard's. They are not making good moves right now. They are in a tough spot. It's unfortunate. Like, I picked up Diablo 4. I didn't play it until a week after it came out. I put up this poster I have here from GameStop. I was super excited. I'm a big fan of the series in general. So I was like, oh, yeah, I'll put that up. That's really cool. I love the series. And then I played it, and I'm like, man, this is like, it's not a terrible game, but like, God, this is a disappointment. That's what I thought. I was disappointed. I didn't think it was bad, but it wasn't good, and it didn't hold my attention like other games. I mean, we had a crazy year last year, so I barely finished any games because it was game hopping. Like, honestly, like, I still got to go back and finish the very end of Super Mario Brothers Wonder. I got maybe 3 hours into RPG. There's just so many drops last year that, it made it pretty difficult to get through games unless you're dedicated to one game and, doing it that way. Carl said in the chat, he said, Baldur's Gate, Saints Row reboot, and just bought this horror game, The Chant, Steam sales. We're actually going to get into a segment with that, so yeah, interesting. And Edwin popped in here and said hello as well. So we've also got the game Enshrouded early access release. So I've seen minimal stuff about this. Kurgle, do you know a little more about this? Because what I saw, I didn't see much. I didn't see too much about this. I've not kept up with this game.
Basically, to paint you a picture, this game is riding the wave of, I would say, Valheim in a different way. And if nobody knows what Valheim is, it's a survival game set in like the Nordic mythology and folklore, and it's basically like a hardcore survival experience. It's difficult, has bosses, yada yada yada. But it actually, next to Palworld, it's been doing really well, and I feel like they did much better than they anticipated to do. And I just thought it was nice to see, they had like a alpha release, and it received really well, and then now they like flushed it out, and it almost looks like a better version of the Lord of the Rings Mines of Moria, I think is the name of the game. And it's just an exciting time for everybody that plays survival games. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anybody here played or not.
I haven't played.
It's refreshing. It's refreshing to see. It's nice to see after so many disastrous releases that we see these indie companies come up with games that actually feel meaningful, feels like you can kind of sink, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours and feel good about yourself. It's pretty
They're
cool.
actually decent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's nice.
interesting too to see because I mean early access in general, it seems to be there's always been sort of backlash that companies kind of release that way. But I think for certain games, especially indie developers, if the game is fleshed out enough to play, then it sort of makes sense. And it seems it doesn't matter with Palworld and now Enshrouded. So, I mean, it's working.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're going into it with the mindset of I'm paying to be a beta tester, I don't feel like that's wrong, right? As long as you're realistic with yourself and understand that you're gonna get a product that's still a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
And I think it is good morally. I don't know, but the people that do decide to help developers make the game into something that players want, I think that's a plus overall. I think it's a net positive for the industry, because if you look at it that way, right, do you want somebody like Blizzard to release you a game that nobody wants, right? Or do you want a game that you as a player actually want? That's at least the way that I see it. I feel like, more power to them. If people are willing to pay for beta release and give feedback and they actually listen to it, I think that's good.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah, most
should be.
definitely. So,
Yeah.
Lay's got to
Think
pop off,
Yeah.
right? So we'll go ahead and let him go and move on to the next topic.
Right.
Thank you for
Put your
hanging
hand up,
out.
guys. That's all right. Keep the conversation going, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
All right. We'll
Sounds
see you
good.
next week.
See you next week.
See ya.
So we've got Final Fantasy 14 live action TV show canceled. What the heck? What a bummer, man. That seemed like it
I
could
didn't
have
even know-
actually been cool.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm not gonna lie.
I feel like it wasn't pushed out there like that to begin with, and maybe because they were having these issues behind the scenes.
I mean, it was. I feel like they talked about it during COVID.
They
But
did. They for sure
the
did.
reason. Yeah, that's the reason why it got canceled. Is just COVID kind of trumped all of their plans.
Like,
Um,
pretty much couldn't get it off the ground, at least in a state that everyone agreed with.
yeah, which is fair. I mean, it sucks when a project has to be scrapped, but sometimes, I mean, that's the thing. Like, if somebody cares about a franchise, you're not gonna let Persona 3 happen.
Maybe I'm biased. I don't really care, nor do I want live action. And like, if I want to enjoy the story, I'll just play the game. But that's me personally.
I find it
Yeah, it's
interesting.
definitely a preference.
Carl in the chat, this is a little off topic, but I asked earlier what everybody was playing, and he said that one of the games he's playing is the Saints Row reboot. And he likes it, not perfect, still prefers 2. So might be the first person I've heard that enjoys the game.
I gotta talk to him tonight on stream. He is one of the guys that plays Baldur's Gate 3 with me, and he usually has a good taste in games, but I guess not tonight.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have a little chat on that one. He asked about the CGI Final Fantasy movies, Advent Children. That was a really good one. I don't know if you guys have seen any of those, but highly recommend. They're really
I have
good.
one, but I've never watched it. It's just sitting on my shelf collecting dust.
Yeah, probably
Collector's dream.
Yeah, the dust is the best part. But yeah, I mean, like, I think it's honestly what's weird to me is that they picked Final Fantasy 14 of all of them to try to make a lot.
MMO.
Yeah,
Well, it makes sense actually, because it's a live service game, and they probably have the most up to date players that are gonna care for the franchise, right? That are gonna watch the show, and then also because it is a live service game, they can always expand the story, like like World of Warcraft, right? It just keeps going and going and going. They're always figuring new things out. So I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Even though I know like what the Final Fantasy 7 is like the one that's everybody loves.
It gets overhyped, but
I feel like, I don't know, man. I feel like almost any other, if they started from honestly like the beginning of Final Fantasy, that would have been kind of cool because I really love the early games and they were more fantasy. They got kind of crazy later where it became more tech involved and futuristic. And I mean, you look at like 15 and the way that it was portrayed, like there was it felt like no elements of Final Fantasy 1 through 6 at all in that game. So I don't know. I haven't played a lot of 14 just because I'm not an MMO guy. But I did watch some videos on the story just so I could be sort of up to date and I don't know. That's how I just kind of on it. So
It's not for everybody, but I feel like personally it makes sense that they did 14 for sure.
If you're trying to tap into that user base, like as if you make
for sure
a standalone story now that it has to stand on its own two legs.
Yep,
definitely a strategic business approach to it.
Don't do the old Final Fantasy movie.
Well, with that said, we're going to go ahead and get into some of the main stories. And we touched a little on some of this earlier, but not the not this part of it. So the Pokemon Company released a statement regarding Palworld. Inquiries regarding other companies' games. We have received many inquiries regarding another company's game released in January 2024. We have not granted any permission for the use of Pokemon intellectual property or assets in the game. We intend to investigate and take appropriate measures to address any acts that will infringe on intellectual property rights related to Pokemon. We will continue to cherish and nurture each and every Pokemon in its world and work to bring the world together through Pokemon in the future. And keep in mind, this is a translation from the Japanese Pokemon Twitter, so take that as you will with the translation. But
it sounds like corporate speak for we have to make a statement because people are bringing it up.
100%.
Yeah,
you're telling me because of any kind of advertising. I think the studio that made Power was based in Japan. They didn't already know about this, and Nintendo and Game Freak's infamous, like how aggressive they are when it comes to lawsuits.
We knew about this 2 years ago, so the game started then, and we knew then that it was going to be called Pokemon with Guns. Like that was the sort of slogan people were giving it because of what we saw. Corporate speak for sure. But what's really intriguing is that the Pokemon Company has never really made statements like this regarding other games or other situations like this before, because there's been a lot of Pokemon clones. I mean, I played one last year.
But you gotta think about how many of those projects or games were worth it to them to sue, right?
They weren't.
Like Palworld probably racked in so much money that they're not thinking about it as, we're losing money. They're thinking probably about, we want to settle for a price that's going to allow us to skim some of the top, right? I feel like that's their goal. Because in reality, they didn't want to think about it. They are, they probably saw it on their radar. They're like, nobody's going to buy this or whatever, right? And then once it actually hit, they probably had like a oh shit moment for the management.
I'd say this, with this game doing as well, I think it's due time that they started having pressure to actually make a game that plays and works well mechanically, as well as it doesn't feel soulless.
You're talking about it as a Pokemon game, or are you talking about
as like a direct competition with Pokemon? As, hey, an indie studio with a fraction of your staff and budget could make a game that rivals what you make, and or
sure.
probably some areas it performs better.
Yeah,
it to some degree, it kind of embarrasses Nintendo and Game Freak for like for how piss poor their last game was.
As it should.
Yeah, there was actually something said. I was trying to find it. There was a statement made that they will be putting more work into their next Pokemon effort. It doesn't mean it's we obviously have a new main line on the way. that is probably already far into development and ready to launch for Switch 2, probably within the first year, I would say, because they're on a yearly cycle with Pokemon games right now. They have been. They had Legends Arceus. They had the Diamond and Pearl remakes. And then not even counting like the spin-off games, like those I'm not even counting towards that. But they've had like the yearly big releases for Pokemon now. And my assumption is, I can't find the exact statement, unfortunately. I wish we had it in the notes. But they did say that they are improving their efforts for future Pokemon releases. And I doubt that's going to be for the next game. I mean, hopefully it's already like a polished game that they've been working on, considering they'll have beefier hardware and a new system. But they got to do something because the track record for Pokemon essentially is that every single Pokemon release is sold more than the last until Scarlet and Violet. And I think that's just because of the feedback that people saw the reviews and they're like, all right, well, I guess I'll hold off on this entry. Maybe I'm not playing a mainline Pokemon game this generation. So,
But
I don't know.
I feel like it's one of those things like the same with Call of Duty, right? It's something people really liked. They're like, okay, this is working. Let's just keep with the same formula. And then eventually they got lazy and they got so uninspired because they just had to make less and less effort to just push a product out, right? And they're just hitting their quotas. That's all it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. You're right with that, and it's unfortunate. Like I still have enjoyed Scarlet and Violet, but the performance issues, man, it's a wreck. Like it runs bad. The glitches in the game that you see, like I'll see my Pokemon go through the wall. I still have a screen recording, Mark. You might remember me showing you this because I also did it on
when you fell through the world.
I fell through the world and was swimming in water that you couldn't get out of, water that you're not supposed to see. That's like underneath the world. So you could see everything on top, and you could see like this extended world where they like started development and didn't do anything with it. And I've still got the footage for it. I should do something with it sometime. But yeah, like it was that bad. And they said there's going to be performance patches. They promised performance patches. I have not yet bought the DLC. I still plan to because I like the game. But I hear that it actually runs worse with the DLC. So
it's the only Pokemon game I've yet to beat, and I don't even want to go back and play. That's how much I didn't enjoy the game.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, like Palworld, I think draws a better comparison to Legends Arceus to me. The way that you play that game, you don't have the standard Pokemon battles. You don't in Palworld. You throw the balls to catch them, and that's it. Like you run around the world, like you fight in the open, but you just send your Pokemon to them, and you don't like engage in a turn-based, sort of battle.
Yeah.
So I think like people keep drawing the comparisons like Scarlet and Violet and like other standard Pokemon games, but I mean, Legends Arceus was anything but a standard Pokemon game. It was like the first game we had like that, where it was like an open world-esque, because it was open areas that you still had to go through certain spots, but it had the first open world elements that we've ever had in a Pokemon game, and it did it well. I mean, that game's good. That's a polished game. So
it's not as big, and I'll say this from when I played it, and I did see aspects of it where even being segmented, you like, it's not completely like, I don't know, the hardware issues. There are some limitations where like, if you turn this fully open world, like I don't know how well this is going to actually perform. I did see hints of that when I played it, where it didn't always run perfectly, even in that semi-open world game.
Yeah,
I'm sure that there's hardware limitation for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, one reason, like fun fact, is like there's I don't know if you guys ever played Deus Ex, but the original game was made for PC, and then Deus Ex Infinite, what is it called? Is it Invisible War?
Not sure.
Yeah, it's Invisible War. But Deus Ex 2, which is Invisible War, that was the first in the series that was made for Xbox, and because Xbox was so hardware limited, they had to literally cramp the game and make it smaller and make it have infinitely more loading screens. So yeah, it's probably what was bugging them. We do want to mention the layoffs too. We should have probably mentioned it earlier with the whole Blizzard rant, but basically Microsoft is laying off 1,900 people. So that's something nice to talk about. It's not nice, but we should talk about it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man, because I did a whole video. What was that? Like 2 weeks ago at this point, and there had already been it was the 8th. It was the 8th. So there had already been 3 company layoffs. One of them being the big one was Twitch. We talked about that. And then, of course, there was the VR studio. What was their name? I can't remember. That did the Doom 3 VR. And then there was another big one. What was the big one that had the layoffs? That like what that was like the big news.
Bungie?
Yeah, Bungie had those layoffs as well. And what's crazy is that this is Microsoft. Like it's under the Blizzard banner, but this is Microsoft, and that is not good. That does not sing good praises for Microsoft right now.
But also you gotta consider the fact that this is a business. They acquired 3 big studios over the last 3 years. And then what happens is you have the overlap of certain like higher up management positions. I'm sure there's also like lower end staff, but basically from the email that Phil Spencer sent is he said that as part of this process, we have made the painful decision to reduce the size of our gaming workforce by approximately 1,900 roles. Out of the 22,000 people on our team. So it's still a huge studio, right? That's a lot of people to employ. And then probably what happened is, you have, I don't know, the higher like leaders of product or whatever, right? Like you had people that were involved with Game Pass, and now you have all these other people that come from another studio that were working on product, but they were working on product for that specific studio. But now you don't really need, 20 product managers. You probably need 10 of them. So I'm sure there was probably a bunch of QA people that got booted, and
they essentially acquired a bunch of studios, and now it's like, now we have a lot of
overhead.
Way too many people that we actually need. You're looking at how much your games you're making, the development costs, what are your profits like. You have to kind of balance all that out. Plus,
for sure,
to some degree there's other forces at work. When you look at the economy as a whole, is going to affect how the studios affect like how they pay. They're going to pay their employees. Is there a drop off to some degree in how many people are actually paying for your games and stuff like that?
I personally feel like, Starfield is one thing. Actually, I wasn't even going to mention.
What pisses me off is that it's doing well. Anyway, keep going.
Well, what I think is that this has to do with acquiring the studios, right? Like they probably had this planned from the get-go. Acquiring the studios, they knew that they were going to have a set amount of people, and they knew what they needed because they've already got their Xbox direct staff that are still overlooking these companies. And of course, they're going to integrate a lot of those people that potentially have been there forever. And apparently, like this says, people that played an important role in Activision, Blizzard, ZeniMax, and the Xbox teams. So these are people that have been in the industry and have worked for all these studios. And it looks like even some of the Xbox people got laid off. So I don't know. I think it's a lot of it has to do with integration of acquiring the studios. I feel like this was bound to happen, but that doesn't fix the problem of this is now like the 5th layoff from companies. And I think that AI does play a small role in that. AI takes over some of what people have to do. And it legitimately does. That's just the truth of it. Like, the creative team or you're just working on assets for the game, AI is able to help conjure some of that versus people doing it manually that they no longer need to pay. And then we are also just in a place where video games cost too much to make. People are spending too much money on video games. You saw the Starfield stuff and how much money was put into that. Diablo 4, I'm sure, had a ton of money put into that. And it didn't flop, but it didn't do well, and it didn't bring the return. They, shared their, So
not what they expected. I guess because I guess it's like a similar comparison is you're maybe putting too much money into games. You've got too much staff that you don't necessarily need to. Because some of the stuff I was looking into, it's not a game, but it's adjacent. We look at a lot of what's going on with Hollywood, where you put all these millions of dollars into these movies and they might as well be a flop because you're lucky to make your money back. And then I actually last night went back and watched the new the Godzilla -1 and the minus color. I didn't even realize this is the first time I watched the movie, but I was digging into that a little bit more, and it's like, hey, this movie, which looked great and was probably one of the better beats, probably the most Hollywood movies I've seen in the last decade.
Wait,
plus.
what was it?
So good. Godzilla minus world.
Oh, Godzilla. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But that movie, which looked good at times, and it wasn't perfect if you look at the CGI, but it was a really enjoyable movie, and like a budget, from anywhere from like $10 to $15 million, compared to you look at Marvel made a $200 million movie. I'm like, well, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Is something like that happening in the game industry where it's like gamers just want an enjoyable game, and you're putting a lot of money into it, but you don't necessarily need to put that much money into it, which just leads to potentially more failure.
If they don't allow the developers to be passionate about it, right? And this is what pisses me off. Yeah, well, this is what pisses me off with the modern day gamers is you blame the developer, which it's not their fault. They don't make the decisions. They can have the greatest ideas ever, but if the stakeholders and the higher management say, oh, we don't want that, it's not as profitable, or that's not going to make us as much money long term, they don't care, right? They're going to make what they want to make. So it's sad. It's really sad. And also you got to consider, while we'll steer on the topic of layoffs, you got to consider the boom that COVID caused for gaming. People often don't think about it, but there's a reason why gaming has been in such a boom the last 2-3 years, is because you had people that were stuck at home, and yes, movies were booming and everything was going great, right? With the material that was ready, obviously. But then you got to consider the video games. Like, you had already thousands, probably millions of video games that people are able to play that never played video games. And then all of a sudden they see those inflated numbers. They're like, oh shit, we have all these new people coming into the space and it's going to be great. And then now the reality is hitting them where people are not playing video games as much. People are not creating as much content. It's a different environment.
They're not stuck inside like they were. So like that was their 100%. Hobby. That's what they did to be entertained during that time.
For sure.
I guess at that point, then it comes down to you have terrible management that can't see past the short-term profit. That you can't think 5-10 years down the road. Like, maybe we should not jump the gun necessarily if this growth isn't going to be sustainable. Obviously, if you could sit down and think about it, it's like this is lockdowns happening. This isn't going to happen forever. It's going to go back to what it was at one point. Just take the profit and maintain where we're at right now is what they probably should have done.
I mean, I stand on the hill that we don't need games that are that take $10 million to be developed. We honestly, gamers don't look at the indie releases. We've talked about it over and over. We don't need the games that have the dumped $10 million into with real actor portrayals and where they're spending $1 million just to have some random actor in the game, and then like stupid stuff where people just don't care. They care about gameplay. People care about gameplay and what's fun. You can look at some of the most played game. Look at Minecraft. That game doesn't look good. People enjoy it. I mean, people just want good gameplay. You don't need that much money put into a game. And also, it's these companies just making these risky investments that they have no idea is going to for sure pay off. And in their minds, they're like, oh, this game is going to blow up. It's going to do so well. Diablo 4, as an example. This game is going to be amazing. Like, people are going to love this game. And, like, what QA testers did you have? Like, are they QA testers just telling you what you want to hear? Like, what is going on? I mean,
Sadly,
also...
that's probably how it goes.
Yeah, legitimately, that's how I feel. And also, we didn't even mention that the Blizzard president stepped down. He left. So Mike Yarba... he's the original co-founder. He departed the company right along with this announcement. So, and they ceased the production of Odyssey, which is a game that we've known about for a while, a survival type game, and they completely ceased the production of that game. So, I mean, that's not a good sign. I mean, you're stopping the production of a game that's pretty far into production, and you lose your president at the same time.
I think it's indicative of just where AAA gaming has been going the past few years. Is you've seen it slowly decline, where it's just become more soulless. We don't care about the actual game. We just want to maximize profits. You get too much into the investor side of it, and then you don't actually care to, make a game that your fans want, and then you put out a lackluster game that you spent millions and more dollars on, but your fans slowly after time just like, I'll go back and play your older game. Like, I don't necessarily want to play this game, or I'll buy it on sale or something like that.
Well, Kurgle, we talked about when Diablo 4 came out, like, surprisingly, people jumped from that game over to Immortal, the game that was getting hated on. People were moving from that game to Immortal. Like, I saw it, and I saw tons of tweets about it. People actually going back to play a mobile game because they're like, man, this is garbage. Now we got this fleshed out game on mobile that we can play that at least gives us our fix and easy accessibility. And I'm sure there were a lot of Steam returns with Diablo 4, I'm sure, and all that stuff. It's just craziness, man. It's just the layoff stuff is really hard to pinpoint, but I think it's all of that in one, and it just continues to happen. And like Discord laid people off, and Riot Games laid people off, Behavior Interactive laid people off, Unity was one of the other big ones. Thunder
Unity, that CEO messed up the whole company.
Yeah, no doubt.
The news that came out about them charging for downloads, like they dug their own grave right there.
I think as a whole, it just comes down to the economy is not the best. People want more money that the companies may or may not have because the games aren't selling as well. And then the companies just hired too many people, more than they probably should have to begin with.
Let me ask you guys this.
Factors.
All right. As gamers, I would call us, like super avid gamers. What do you feel like on the price increase on a game if it has all the content already on it? And I'm looking back to the days of Super Nintendo and NES where games are actually more than they are now. Like Chrono Trigger launched at $100 then, which would be like $160 now or something. Games launched at a higher price then.
Here's one thing you got to consider. People bring this point up all the time. Like, I used to pay X amount of dollars for video games, right? You got to understand that video games were not as popular. Video games were at a different point. They were in their early phases. There was new technology that was unfeasible to some companies. And these companies that made those games had to charge that much in order to survive, right? That's my view of it personally, right? Nowadays, you have AI, you have all these optimized engines, you have millions of dollars funneled into you through advertisement. You do not need to charge over $60 for a video game. I'm sorry. A lot of people are going to disagree with me, but I feel like there is so much more money in gaming in general that I don't feel like they can justify charging more for video games.
Well, I mean, the standard is $70 now, regardless. Like, I went to GameStop today. I went in there to grab some promo stuff, and I was shocked to see, I didn't know this, but Mortal Kombat 1 on the Switch is $70.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that on the Switch it was $70. Now, $70 is going to stay the standard. Like there's no getting around that. That's going to be the standard for AAA releases, period. And we've even heard talk of raising it to 80 for the future. So
I think there's a risk if you raise it too high, you're going to start seeing sales drop, or people are going to wait until they can get it on sale. Because
Unless
the other
you're Nintendo.
I mean, I already do that.
I was just going to say, because also, 8 or 20, 30 years ago, hardware cartridge costs were something you had to bake into that. Now, so much of this is straight digital. I'm like, it's not costing you as much to get these games to the customer.
Yep.
And especially when you look at the PC market, like how many people that play PC that have Steam, it's like, that's great. I'm not buying this game till it goes on sale. Like I'm not going to pay full price. If I wait long enough, I've got this big library. If I wait long enough, this new game in 2 years, I can get for like half the price. Like,
and get all the DLCs and the definitive edition. That's me. That's literally me. Exactly.
I buy it day one, it's gonna be buggy. I've got all these issues. I'm paying $70. Where if I can get the game, it's fixed, all the DLC and on sale. Like it's why 100%. Why not wait?
That's what I do. I mean, I've waited on 2 games that I've really wanted to play, which was Mortal Kombat 1, Street Fighter 6. I said, hey, I'll wait on a sale. I've already seen Street Fighter 6 drop down to $30. I'm waiting at that $20 price point, and then I'll grab it. That's where I'm at, and like. It's that way with physical and digital. I mean, you still do get the sales like on consoles. Like Xbox does really well with doing sales. They do sales every single week, but
not to the degree that you get with Steam.
Not to the degree of Steam, and that's the truth.
You get them eventually.
Yeah. And on top of that, you have even the other alternative marketplaces that you can buy games for Steam even cheaper, right? So I 100% agree. I don't know. I think it's a ecosystem that works. Steam knows it. You have items like skins that you can sell on the marketplace and buy video games. Perfect example, right? I bought $230 worth of video games and I didn't spend a dime on it. It was all from in-game items that I held on to for a couple of years. And I was like, hey, I always wanted to own the Dark Souls trilogy, Sekiro, Divinity Original Sin. Like I just bought a shitload of games and I was like, it's not real. It's real money, but it's not money that it's mine.
I do have one negative games. I have to tell you about that. Steam has DRM on their game, so you don't own them.
Honestly, we can get into that topic next time. We can talk about it. At this point,
let's dive into your new segment that you wanted to start, the Steam sales, because we're talking about Steam right now. So let's dive into that.
Okay, so for anybody that's looking for something new, there is a video game you can get for free on Epic. It is called Infinifactory, and you can grab that. But we have...
You froze there, Kurgle. Oh, now he's dark.
Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you now. Oh, he's out. Well then, I guess we'll go ahead and transition to the next one, see if he pops in here. We've got new, I don't know what happened there. We've got some new releases that I wanted to point out. Oh, Kurgle's back. We'll go ahead and continue through this real quick. So we've got a game called Graven that released on the 23rd. We've got a game called How that is PlayStation 5 Series X that is on the 23rd as well, so that's already out. Immortality, PlayStation 5, 23rd. Apollo Justice Ace Attorney Trilogy, which got rated an 8.5 with Metacritic, and that came out yesterday. We got Grime that also came out yesterday. That's Switch only. Hidden Through the Time, Myth and Magic, PS5 Series X Switch. That came out yesterday as well. Hitman Blood Money Reprisal, Switch yesterday. Phantom Abyss, that came out yesterday as well on the Series X and PC. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which is a highly anticipated game, that came out today on PS5, Series X, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And it got a Metacritic score of 8.5. And then, of course, we got Tekken 8, which got an 8.25. So that's on all platforms except Switch as well. So we can go ahead and dive back into your segment there, Kurgle. Wanted to highlight those new releases for the week.
There is a video game you can grab for free. It is for PC. It's on Epic Game Store, and it's called Infinifactory. And then there is also Mordheim, City of the Damned on GOG.com. There are. I'm gonna send this in the YouTube chat. It's called GG.deals, and there are some crazy good deals and discounts on video games that just released, and some older titles where you can get insanely good deals. And they have this section on the bottom left that you can see, which is called historical lows. So we'll show you actually how much the games were discounted, so you can grab some cheap video games. I'm not 100% sure. I know that there's a few other websites like cdkeys.com and Kingwin where you can possibly grab them for other platforms, but I'm not entirely sure. I do use Fanatical a lot, which is a platform I.
Oh, we lost him again. Oh, he's black again. Oh man, I don't know what's happening there.
Some technical difficulties.
Having a little problems. We got Mark leaving a chat in there finally. Holy crap! I'm shocked right now. So we have also got highlighting obviously the new games that came out this week. Are you interested in that Like a Dragon game?
I've got one of them. I need to get into this series, but it's such a hard series, and I've already got such a backlog of games. I'm kind of already on. It'll be I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah,
might take 5 years, but
what's it called? Like a Dragon, or it's just Yakuza Like a Dragon is what it's called. That's
apparently that's what it was technically called in Japan, but when the translation way back when, they just like, hey, we're gonna call it this instead.
Yeah, I like that they switched the name, and they're still doing the other style, the non-RPG style games under a new title as well. So, which might still be just the. I don't know if they are giving it a new title or. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember, but they're going to stick with doing that action adventure style as well. Still with they're doing like the split releases. They're going to do the Like a Dragon as RPGs, and then do I think they're still calling it Yakuza as like the action adventure beat 'em up games. So I think that's pretty interesting. Yeah, so that's cool stuff. Two pretty big releases this week, I would say. We've got also one of the discussions. We had some viewer questions that I wanted to get to that I'm pulling up now. Sorry, guys. So we have got what makes you decide what you're going to stream, record, or play at any given time? Is it based on new releases or things that you like, or viewer submissions? That's the first question we've got. I forgot to add these into the notes. So what decides what you're playing? If you're doing any sort of, I guess, content on it, streaming or otherwise, what makes you decide what you're gonna play? Is it the community that makes that decision? Is it you? Is it a game that's just a new release, or is it something you just want to play?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Personally, I have had a really rough time with listening to others a lot more than doing what I want to do. And lately, I've been doing what I want to do, and I've been much happier and much more motivated to create content. So, yeah, I have a huge backlog now, and I kind of just, after I finish one game, I look at my list again, I reprioritize if I'm in a mood for something else, and I switch the order up, and I kind of go from there.
I think we might be getting raided in here or something. We got all kinds of people popping in. So we've, I would say just to hit a few comments, I guess, because we're getting quite a few. We got Lucas, who's Slave to the Mind Dies, says, for the record, you can do that with PlayStation prices for consoles, referring to the sales, I think. Carl said that Graven game that we mentioned earlier looks like a Hexen style game, which is interesting. That's a throwback. I'll have to look into that. Kurgo wants to throw his computer out the window. Lucas also said the last two are not the same. They went to turn-based with them, talking about Like a Dragon. So yeah, Yakuza games are good, and everybody wants to ban coffee. So yeah, we got a coffee ban on this show apparently. Also, for other questions, we've got, what are your interests in continuous releases in old series that have no new involvement or are the same as predecessors? That's a little confusing. I think they're trying to say games that don't get changed a lot from game to game. Maybe like a Street Fighter, like a Pokemon, or what's your guys' thoughts on games that do the like slight improvement with the new entry and have been around for 30 years?
Go ahead.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If your fans like what you have and you just want to make the game look better, just little tweaks, why reinvent the wheel if what you have is working?
But what about Pokemon? Then you gotta say
backfired on them terribly.
So I guess it depends on the series, right? I mean, like, there's a lot of series like that where, like, I guess each entry just has like very, very minor improvements or changes. Like, you know, I'm a Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter fan, but I would say that, like, you know, Mortal Kombat 11-1 isn't like a massive change. I think it's like mechanics and, you know, slight with graphics, but I get what they're asking here. I get it. But yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on the game and the series, honestly, for me. So
I mean, I guess the idea is, I guess you could always look at it this way, like, hey, we like this format, but if you want to try something new, try it, but still keep making the game in the old format. The way I think of it is in Metroid series, where it's always been a side scroller. With the Prime series, which is more of like a spin-off, they went with the full 3D. I know it's a different era when everything was going from 2D to 3D, more on the back end of it, but they still, you know, took a little while. They still have the 2D games, and they made Metroid 5, and there was still a very big fan base for it. So why not, you know, develop side scroller version of it for the people that prefer that version, and you could still dabble in the 3D version of it.
yeah. I mean, I think it just depends. We've got another. This one's a funny one, targeted at one specific person. Mark, why did you leave us? Where have you been? I have missed you. And this is coming from a specific person that always asks about Mark.
Just been busy. I haven't had time to do anything else between work and school. I don't have a whole lot.
So you didn't disappear into a forest and go camping for 7 months, right?
No, I just a lot between work and doing school. It's just really been a really busy year, and it's gonna continue to be busy at least till the end of this year when I finish my degree.
I feel it. Yeah, I finish in April with school myself, so it's just nuts right now. We got actually a question targeted at Kurgle. Kurgle, I've been interested in your content for a while. What makes you decide to do the style of YouTube videos that you do while you're mostly a streamer sharing your content on Facebook? Is it supposed to be funny, or are you trying to be serious with your Let's Plays? I have no idea.
I'm just trying to be me. It's as I said, I played video games semi-professionally, and I always wanted to, and I thrived in that environment for so long. But then when I stopped, I kind of continued down that path of esports, and I was miserable. And then eventually I just said, I'm just gonna do what I'm happy with, and if, along the way people would find it interesting, then great. If I end up not streaming to anybody or nobody watches my videos, that's fine too, because guess what? I enjoy it, So yeah, it's not supposed to be anything specific. I just like having conversations about gaming, sharing my love for video games, and I built a small community that enjoys it, and that's all I need.
Yeah, you've got a good community of people. I love to see it, and you're consistently putting things out. And we've talked before on the content creator sort of burnout or motivation sort of thing, and a lot of that goes into like you said, like I guess I didn't answer the question earlier that if you listen only to the community, then you lose enjoyment in what you want to do. It becomes
100%.
it becomes at that point sort of like just a job. Like I love viewer requests, and if it's something that I might be interested in and maybe have never heard of, like sure, I'd love to check it out. But I don't want to stream or talk about the same game, over and over if I'm not having fun with it. Like, first of all, I just don't have the time. And if I don't enjoy a game these days, I just ditch it. I try to give every game some time. Like, I gave Starfield, for me, more time than I felt like I should have. 4 hours in, I knew hour one that it wasn't my kind of game.
You're not a lunatic like me.
Yeah, I'm not a lunatic. I can't do the playthrough all the way if I don't enjoy it. But here's it's kind of a non-question. Mark, Brandon, I really enjoyed watching the Game Awards stream. That sort of thing is very fun where it's community involved and we can all watch something together and enjoy it. What did you guys think overall of everything that happened? And do you think that this coming year will be a better show? I don't know. I couldn't tell you on the
Depends
better
on what
show.
games are announced. I only watch it for the game announcements. I'm not gonna lie. I don't really, kind of like you think about the Oscars, the Game Awards, but like I don't really care what game wins. I'm there for
new announcements.
I could care less for what actually wins what.
We got very
I'm
good.
Being completely honest.
We got, and I want to say thank you to the guys that have been kind with the questions. We got. I think people enjoyed the most when we just started conversating over like the bullcrap, the ads, and like the stuff we didn't care about that wasn't like an announcement. That was really interesting. So, and then we've got another question here asking, what is the best way to start a podcast or to get into content if it's something you've never done in front of a camera or you've never been involved in a sort of video game space like that? Is it something that is worth still trying to do in 2024?
Who wants to go?
You can go.
I'll start. Yeah, I mean, I think there's space for everybody. It all depends on what you want to do. It can be a competitive space, but what I say is don't make it competitive. Just do your own thing. Other people will try to make it competitive. And if you have not been in front of the camera, here's what you do. You throw yourself into a stream or podcast and you just do it. I swear that my growth. So actually, I got an email today about a TikTok video from 1 year ago today, and I want to share it after this. I shared it on TikTok stories. The improvement of me speaking to the camera from then to now is just massive. And I just threw myself into it. I mean, Mark, like you had no experience either with the camera, and we literally just threw ourselves into it. Like we just threw ourselves into the fire, into the lion's den, and we learned along the way. Like we went through all the hiccups. We learned how to talk to the camera in an interesting way, how to be semi-entertaining, whether you think we're entertaining or not. You just learn. I mean, you just learn by doing it. And I think that kind of goes for most things in life. So if you have not been on video, just do it. And I'll tell you exactly what I did. When I started, because I wrote for video game websites for years and years and years, and I intentionally stayed away from the video because I was nervous and didn't want to do it. So what I did is I made like 20 test videos of me just talking to the camera about stuff, and I watched them back. I saw the points of where I was either boring or where I kept saying or like whatever those sort of filler words, and I just practiced. So I mean that's what I did. So you guys go. I'm not sure.
Yes. Oh, I mean, it's less about that, and it's more, I guess, more life in general. It's like if you don't ever do something, you're not gonna do it. Like you have to take that first step, and then you have to do something you kind of want to enjoy. Like if you're not willing to take any risk, there's gonna be no reward. You're not gonna get where you want to be. But also, if you do want to get somewhere, like, okay, I want to get to this end goal. Like, what are my, it kind of helps if something seems daunting, like break it down to the steps. Like, what's the first step I got to do to get to this end goal, and then slowly get there. And if things change along the way, or you decide to do something different, that's great. Or you're like, all right, how do I do this better? I mean, YouTube's a wonderful tool. There's so much stuff on YouTube that I just like search on YouTube. How do I do this? Type of thing.
Well, I mean, it's that way, like, with the editing, and like we had no experience with anything with any of that, and it's just diving in. Like there's a lot of resources out there, a lot more than when the personalities of YouTube back in 2006, 2007 started, where they just started their own thing, the AVGNs, the Boogies, the Happy Console Gamers. Like some of those guys still do the same format and are very successful. My favorite YouTuber, and I talk about him all the time, is Happy Console Gamer, and he's done the same style of videos from the beginning. He sits in front of his game collection and he just talks. There's little edits. There's sometimes gameplay footage thrown over, but he just talks, like literally just a conversation, not a bunch of cuts, not a bunch of, switching stuff up. And, I wouldn't say that works so much now, but when you're established and have been doing it for that long, it does work. But just try your own style and do it. Mystically said in the chat, he said it definitely takes time to build confidence. Yeah, that's what I did not have in the beginning. I certainly did not have video confidence for sure, and it was just doing it. And being passionate about games, knowing that I wanted to do it, I was passionate enough to just dive in and start doing it. So the start of the podcast came from that, being passionate about it, knowing that, hey, this is something I want to do. This is something that I care about. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of that. And we've got one more viewer question. And they asked, is there anything that you find yourself going back to with retro games, or even games that came out in the last few years, that have caught your attention and you're often thinking about? It could be a comfort game or something that you just really, really enjoy. Is it what type of game is it, and why do you think about that game that way? So for me, I guess, like, speaking of like a comfort game, like, I don't know. For me, like, it's really easy to dive in and out of like King of Fighters or like a SNK, like a fighting game. For one, like, that's sort of a comfort game for me. I can just jump in and out. Like, I could play 10 minutes and be done. That's what's cool about like the little mini arcade units. Like, you can play with a controller, just jump in and out of the gameplay. But I think, like, if I'm talking about anything like semi recently, it would probably be I really like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I really like that game. I think it's just super fun, simplistic 2D side scroller, again, that you can kind of sort of jump in and out of a level, and it's like a beautifully designed game from Retro Studios that does Metroid. So, there's a lot of polish and quality to it. It handles very well, and I find that to be a game that's easy to jump in and out of. So
Nice.
Yeah.
For me, it would have to be Path of Exile. It triggers something in my brain that, there's essentially a Diablo 2 clone that just did it well. And the game is still popular to this day. Super complex. It is not beginner friendly to some extent. But then once you actually understand it, and it's so comforting, you can just go and, decimate monsters and just have fun with it. But other than that, there's, probably something that not a lot of console players can relate, but Counter-Strike, Surf, that's something that's always been relaxing to me. Always loved surfing, putting in some good tunes and then just zone out and surf on a map. It's been always fun. Those would have to be the two for me that I can always go back to.
I'd
nice.
say it's not like one solid game, but a game that I can sit down and play for either 10 minutes or for 2 hours. It's Rocket League. because I enjoy it as much as I want to say it's relaxing, but I will rage while I play that game. But I enjoy it, but because you're playing with other people, it can frustrate you at sometimes. You frustrate
It's very
yourself.
competitive, yeah.
I'm a competitive person, so I always find myself playing that game, but more like traditional. I don't know if you want to call it relaxing, but there's 2 games that I always find myself going back to playing. The first Mass Effect game, just because there's just something about that game from when I played it. I just really enjoy playing that game, and I'll usually play it at least once a year.
Yeah.
And I'll play the whole thing, and then I always find myself periodically going back to playing Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. From playing that game growing up. It's just a really relaxing game where it's just like there's no stress. Even if I'm playing like a scenario, I just build a theme park and I might have a video or some music and I'm just gonna build some roller coasters and maybe end the game by being psychopathic and drowning people in a lake or something like that.
I expected hearing Rocket League from you, but I also thought that you were potentially going to mention Civilization 2 or Metroid Prime. Or even what was the other game that you really what was
Those are enjoyable games. I just don't play them to the same degree that I do because usually I'm on my PC more often than not at this point.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah,
there's a lot of games like Skyrim, Borderlands 2. These are games I always go back to and replay. Just not as much as some of the other ones. Like I've got like 5 games that I always find myself playing at least once a year. Crazy enough. I
remember when you came over that one night, we played the Handsome Collection recently released, and yeah, those are fun times. So I asked for any final questions in the chat. We got a couple. We've got Evil Tiggs is asking if you can bring back any franchise from the 80s and 90s, what would it be?
For me, I mean, I guess it's still a thing to some extent, but Heroes of Might and Magic 2 and Heroes of Might and Magic 3, I feel like I never understood them. I was always bad at them, but there was something so comforting about playing them. They're just great fantasy RPG games. I feel like they did an amazing job.
I've got a couple myself. I would say 3D Bomberman, anything essentially. I guess that wouldn't be 80s and 90s, but that came out early 2000s. So besides that, Dino Crisis. Jetters would have came out in like 2001.
Well, 3D Bomberman, technically, you go back to the 64 with Bomberman 64.
Yeah, that's true.
3D, and that's
true.
That would be a 90s game.
True. Bomberman Hero. Yeah, that's true. I guess other than that, maybe just because I'm sort of nostalgic for it, although it's not like a great series, Primal Rage, probably. I really enjoyed that back in the day as a kid. Like they could do that good now. Like who doesn't like dinosaurs fighting? I mean, everybody loves dinosaurs, so it wasn't good then. It doesn't hold up now, but I feel like that's something that could be refreshed, remade, and like it could be like Killer Instinct style, and it's dinosaurs. So that's the answer for me. And we got what's everyone's favorite RPG?
Oof, that's a tough one.
That's an easy one.
Mass Effect. It's funny.
Not for me.
It's funny that you mentioned that game actually earlier because I only actually experienced Mass Effect for the first time last year, and I played through the whole series. Yeah. I always wanted to play it, but at the time I never had a good PC. Consoles were super expensive in Eastern Europe, so Mass Effect was a really good experience to me. But favorite RPG, like favorite, has to be Cyberpunk 2077. As much shit as that game gets,
it's good.
That was what I imagined whenever I would think about a sci-fi video game. Actually, this is a tough one.
It's a good game.
It's a good game.
Deus Ex series is absolutely incredible. It's hard. I have like top 5 games that I can absolutely not rank.
Well, list the top 5 because I was going to list more than one too. It's hard for me with RPGs are my favorite genre.
Deus Ex series, Mass Effect, Cyberpunk 2077, I feel like Red Faction was really good, even though it has its ups and downs. And then the fifth would probably be, I would say, I mean, our Red Dead Redemption 2 is incredible. That was a really good one. I would say those five are just insane experiences to me. I'm sure there's more. Actually, Baldur's Gate 3 is also. You see, it's hard. There's so many good games.
There really are.
More good games.
There really are. Mark, let's hear yours.
Top one, just because, and it's been years since I played it, but it just left an impression on my mind, and that is, of course, I immediately blank on the name. It's a Chrono Trigger, hands down, best RPG, best story game
one of mine.
Played before.
Picked one of mine. Yep.
I'm sorry, it's such a good game, but it's been years since I played it.
It holds up just as well.
I've never played it. I'm so
it's
ashamed of myself.
10 out of 10 game.
I do enjoy Mass Effect, though it feels like as the games go on, the story gets more and more crappier, personally. But it's a game series I've recently just got into almost about a year ago to date, and it was the Trails games,
yes,
especially Trails in the Sky. Like, immediately just fell in love with with those games. And it's just the
people
JRPGs,
love to see you stream that too. I saw you enjoying that game.
There's some about the Japanese games where the gameplay might be old or might not look AAA-esque, but it's always accompanied by a really good story and really good writing.
Yeah,
that's
they tend to have really good music too. That's one thing I noticed with JRPGs, and I never really got into them too much. I still haven't played any of the Final Fantasy games, and I hate saying that because I feel like an embarrassment to the gaming world.
This is literally a Final Fantasy podcast, and you never played.
To be fair,
I played Final Fantasy 14.
The least Final Fantasy of them all.
I know.
I'll say this: the last two Final Fantasy games I played was Final Fantasy. Was it Type 0, which I absolutely hated?
Yeah, terrible game.
And then Final Fantasy, what's it, X or 10 or whatever you want to call it?
10.
I hated that game as well.
Also one of the worst ones.
Dropped Final Fantasy as a whole after those.
You
games.
you picked the bad ones. Type 0 is a terrible spinoff, and 10 is of the mainline ones. 10 and 10 and 13 are usually generally like seen as like the worst in the series. So you picked two of the bad games.
I've got the most recent one that I bought for, I think, PS5, but it's just been sitting on my shelf since I bought it, just because.
The remake or Rebirth or
the newest Final Fantasy game, not the 7 remakes.
Are you talking about 16? Sorry. Yeah. 6. It's fun. It's fun. It's definitely nowhere. It's not even in the top probably 10 discussion, but it's like a Game of Thrones game.
There's a point where I was buying like a new PlayStation game every week, and it was kind of like, I'll get round to them. Actually, I think of the name of the game now.
All right, he's gonna grab it. I'll go ahead and just start listing a couple of mine. Chrono Trigger was one. All right, let's see what's he got. What's he got to show us?
No, it was a weird because I got it on sale. Apparently, it came out for $40 and people hate it, but it was called a Schoolgirl Zombie Hunter, which takes about 4 to 5 hours to beat. And it looks really cheap, but it's a weird game that I was like, this is just a fun, short game like that I just randomly picked up. But I used to always go buy like essentially AAA type games, and I was like, what's this weird?
What's the cover look like? What's the cover?
Oh my god, it looks so
what
weird.
You'd expect from a Japanese schoolgirl.
I have seen that at the store. Interesting. Yeah, but it's not like actually like a waifu game, right? It's like a legitimate game.
It's a bunch of schoolgirls, and there's a zombie apocalypse, and you're picking up guns around a school. Why they're that, I've got no idea.
Well, it sounds like the anime that me and you used, High School of the Dead. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, you can run around in your underwear if you really want to.
Oh, jeez. Oh, God.
It's Japanese. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, there's a name for it, but it's one of those games.
Man, we are popping in with the viewers tonight. I appreciate it, guys. I'll go ahead and list my couple of RPGs before we wrap up here. So Chrono Trigger was one for me. Another would be Earthbound. I think I would also probably pick Pokemon Crystal. And what?
I was gonna say, it's probably my all-time favorite Pokemon game is the Gen 2 games, and I think Crystal is probably the best.
Yeah, they're my favorite, like Pokemon designs. They brought in the day-night system, like everything about those games are good. And Crystal, like, obviously perfected the silver and gold. Yeah, I would say like Pokemon Crystal, Earthbound for sure, which I would love to see a return of, but probably will never happen. And then I think this is tough with RPGs. This is a really, really tough question. Oh gosh, I don't know. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just so hard. I love so many RPGs. Probably like maybe Final Fantasy Legends 2 on the GBA. That's mostly nostalgia speaking, but I really loved that back then. And then Secret of Mana on the Super Nintendo is, to me, a 10 out of 10 game as well. So those would be
Secret of Mana games.
Really good. There's a new one coming too. Remember the Game Awards? They announced a new one, and it looks really, really good. So yeah, we'll go ahead and hit a couple comments here. Mine are Lunar, Grandia, Morrowind, and Dragon Force. Lunar are very good games. I have not touched Grandia in years.
I just want to make the comment. Was it Dagoth is the only true god? Put that out there.
Well, okay, thank you. We appreciate that. Some JRPGs are good. God Eater I played now and again. Unpopular opinion, I liked Final Fantasy 13. Lightning was cute. All right, so we got a waifu lover in here. Mystically said 2 is my favorite. And yeah, so with that said, we will go ahead and wrap up this week's show. We had a lot of news. A quick recap. Obviously, the layoffs are big news. And quickly we'll hit this because I've forgotten it was massive news. The Wii U and 3DS are losing their online functionality, period. They're completely being shut down. Servers are being shut down. So all the games that are stuck on there and still people, I mean, like Kid Icarus Uprising still has a very active online community. Splatoon 1 still has even Mario Kart on the Wii U. My opinion is it freaking sucks. You lose all that online capability for those games, so it's hard. How do you preserve online multiplayer? Like can you? People bring up private servers, right? But
it's the only way.
It's the only way, and I don't know how feasible that is with Nintendo games. I can't think of a Nintendo game that's got a fan server myself, but yeah, people are sad in the chat. So that kind of sucks. I wanted to dive in that a little bit more, but yeah, it's unfortunate, and we knew it was coming. And Evil Tig says, Nintendo, why do you hate preserving games? Which is true. I mean, like, it sucks because like so many games are now, I forget the count of games that are on each of the eShops, but they are just going to be gone. Like, that's it. They're gone. And those are people's legacies. Those are people's work that they worked hard for. Even the online multiplayer for games, those were people, could have been somebody's passion project, could have been somebody's life goal. We got Grumpy Bomber crying in the chat. But yeah, I mean, it sucks, like, but it was bound to happen. Like, we knew it was coming. I will be honest though, I am quite shocked because the Wii, online capabilities stayed on much longer during like the Wii U and 3DS life cycle. Actually, the Wii servers didn't shut down until right before the Switch launch. So
I think that's a mixture of the popularity as well as the failure of the Wii U.
But the 3DS did not fail, and in it there's a lot of online games that people are actively playing. But does that
apparently not enough?
Apparently
well,
not
it's
enough.
also probably a push towards the Switch 2, sales.
Yeah, they want everything. It's all profit driven, really.
It is. It's bound to happen, and it's unfortunate. So we are going to go ahead and wrap up episode 69. Next week, we are at episode... Nice. I was waiting for it the entire episode for somebody to say it. So next week, we are not a nice episode. We are episode 70. So we will see you guys all again next week. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for the comments and having such a successful episode. Everybody have a great day.